This is Dumbed Down Life number 127.
Good evening, Darren. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, Mitch.
Good.
How's yourself?
Yeah, not too bad at all, actually. Very good. So last week we spoke on a couple of topics about space, and guess what? I have more space stuff.
Space.
Yeah.
Space.
The landers that we talked about last week, they're already old news in effect, because NASA are already working on their next Mars rover.
2020?
2021.
Okay, near enough.
Their next rover, they're already planning it, and it's going to be lighter and less equipped than the ones that are currently on there. And it's more of an experimental thing rather than a science thing. They're not sending it up there to find out much, but they're sending it up there to test out
the ones that are up there at
tech.
the moment are pretty much mobile laboratories, aren't they? They've got little ovens and spectrometers and drills and all sorts of things.
That's right, yeah. This one won't have anywhere near as much technology in there as the ones that are on Mars now currently have. But the aim of it is to, or one of the major aims of it is to try and make oxygen while it's there.
Right.
The idea being that obviously the next big step is to send man to Mars, a manned mission. Yeah. And transporting fuel and oxygen is quite expensive. So the idea is they're going to send this rover over to Mars to test out whether they can make oxygen on site.
Right.
Because they'll use oxygen as fuel to get home.
Or as part of the fuel, yeah.
Or as part of the fuel. Because they split oxygen down to make hydrogen to make the fuel to get home, don't they? And also, obviously, they're going to need oxygen to breathe.
Yeah. My question would be, how do they currently cope on the International Space Station?
Well, I don't know, if I'm being honest, but I'm guessing when they fly these supply missions up there, that it includes whatever it is that they use to make oxygen from up there, which is a relatively simple process, I guess, of just flying some stuff up to them. But when you're a few million miles away, that's not quite so easy, is it?
Well, I'm not sure how long it is between visits to the ISS. And do they take ingredients for oxygen, or do they take oxygen bottles?
I would imagine they take ingredients and produce it while they're up there. I really don't know, actually. I've not actually thought about it. But I guess they either take the components and produce the oxygen while they're in there, or they just take pure oxygen up there.
Yeah. And I think that, because do you know how they're looking to make the oxygen on Mars?
No.
I thought I read that they're looking to land one of the areas where they believe there's water under the surface.
Right, and then break it down from there.
But that was something I read a while ago. Whether that's still the plan, I don't know.
No, that I don't know. But no, I just thought it was interesting that they're planning on sending something there to not really do anything, not to learn any more, other than
just to do a single experiment.
A single experiment as to preparing the way for the next stage of getting a man on Mars.
It's a tricky thing, isn't it? Because with a government only being in term for a maximum of 8 years, and possibly only 4, you can't sort of say, we guarantee that in 20 years, or sorry, not 20 years, in 6 years' time, we will be sending a man to the moon. Well, they got elections next year.
Yes.
So
yeah.
And then the next president comes in and says, well, that we're not wasting all these billions of dollars on sending man to Mars. We're going to start another war instead. So they can't guarantee from one sort of. So NASA has to take sort of what steps they can to sort of check the boxes to say, right, okay, so what can we do sensibly with the next visit? We can test and try out how to make oxygen. Next, we can try growing something on Mars.
But don't NASA have to sort of submit proposals to the government, then the government sign off? Once they've done that, isn't that kind of locked down and the next administration can't affect that? Which is why they don't plan too far ahead.
Possibly, because it's still going to come out of the budget of this administration. So yeah, if they were to try planning too far ahead, and they're going to be playing too big, and it's not going to fly, literally.
Hi, this is Scott Segler, author of the novels Infected and Contagious, and you are listening to Dumbed Down Life.
Meanwhile, somewhere else in the galaxy, Rosetta. You've heard about Rosetta, have you?
I read the headline on the story today, and I seem to remember it, but very vaguely.
Rosetta is a 10-year project to land a ship on a comet.
Right.
And it's finally getting very, very close to being able to do it.
Is this the one that's going to be piloted by Bruce Willis?
No.
No?
No. No, it's Wednesday. So depending on when you're listening to this, it's either happened, failed, happened, succeeded, or not happened yet. They're going to do the final manoeuvres that will get it within 100 kilometers of this comet, sorry.
So, but they get it within 100, and then what, is it going to follow it for a week, or what? How where does it go from there?
It's going to follow it for another year.
Oh, goodness. Okay.
Yeah. It's traveling at about 55,000 miles an hour. But the burns that they're going to do will put it into a triangular orbit around the comet with a relative speed of about 1 meter per second.
A triangular orbit?
Yeah. How they managed to do a triangular orbit, I don't know. But
that kind of sounds like it's going to need a course adjustment at every corner.
You would think, wouldn't you? But whether it's because of the shape of the comet that causes it to be triangular, I don't know. But yeah, hopefully by Wednesday evening, the Rosetta probe will be in orbit around the comet. Like I say, it will then follow it for a year, analysing it and trying to figure out a landing site so it can launch a smaller probe that it's carrying with it to actually land on the comet.
When was it launched?
10 years ago, around the same time as Spirit and Opportunity, yeah, but 2004.
So it's 2004's technology again that they're looking at here.
Yes.
That's trying to land on a comet, and I'm just trying to imagine, because when you say comet, I think of big chunk of rock with a tail following behind it.
Pretty much.
So how is this? How is the ship avoiding the detritus that's coming from the comet?
I'm guessing that might be how the orbit, it's going to orbit around it.
Is orbiting around the tail?
No, orbiting sort of, if you imagine, it's not a perfect sphere, but if you imagine a sphere and the tail's coming out of it sort of from behind, they'll go around it sort of laterally. So it's traveling with it and going around it laterally. So the tail is always pointing away from it.
Yeah.
And then, it will scan it for a year and send all the readings back to Europe. It's the European Space Agency. It's not NASA this time.
Right.
Yeah. And they'll sort of analyze it, look at the maps that they've built up from it and find a place for it to land. But recently they've discovered that might be a little more difficult than they'd originally anticipated, because they found out that it's not a regular shape. Now, obviously, it's not going to be a perfect sphere. Like when we imagine a comet, you think of a big ball with a tail coming out of it.
Yeah, again, possibly because of that same film, I don't tend to think of that. I tend to think of a big rock-shaped rock.
But this one apparently it's almost two rocks stuck together.
Oh, wow.
They've sort of nicknamed it the rubber duck because it looks like it's got like a body that's sort of fairly ovalish, and then it's got this thing sticking on top. So they've not sure now whether how they're going to be able to land it, because the anticipated gravity and the way the gravitational pull works, they may have to readjust all their calculations to be able to land something on it. And as the information, any instructions they send to it take 22 minutes to get there.
Oh, ouch.
That might cause them a bit of a problem.
And it's not going to have that great an AI to be able to land itself, is it?
You wouldn't have thought so, not from 2004, no.
But something that's... Because what's the sort of size of the comet, do you know?
No, I can find out.
Because I can't imagine that it would have much of a gravitational pull at all.
I suppose it's relative, given that there's nothing else around it affecting its gravity, and this probe is quite small.
Yeah.
And
it's difficult to even conceptualize how it's moving. And you again, for the films tend to give you this image of when you say it's moving at, sorry, what was the speed you said? 50,000 miles an hour or something? 55,000. When you think of something moving at 55,000 miles an hour, you think, by the time you've seen it, it's gone.
It's gone, yeah.
However, when the satellite is also moving at 55,000 miles per hour, and the nearest planetary body is millions of miles away, then everything appears to be stationary.
That's relativity for you.
Exactly. or is this thing rotating at 100 miles an hour?
Exactly. I mean,
so in which case,
the sort of logic and the maths behind it must be phenomenal, because I've always I've always thought, I mean, even landing on the moon or sending probes to Mars, you kind of have to, obviously you're aiming this rocket at a big, huge, whacking great big planet or a small rock, whatever it is, but you kind of got to aim it at where it's going to be
by the time it gets there.
It gets there, because it's like when you're clay pigeon shooting, you lead the clay, don't you? You shoot where the clay is going to be.
But worse than that, you've got to aim it from where you're going to be.
Yeah. And just the logic of it, the maths of it just astound me. I mean, planetary movements and all of that are a fairly well-defined process, and you can predict with great accuracy where it is. Yeah. But you just got to think how many things can go wrong in that 10 years that it's taken you to get from here to there.
Which is what makes this
it's just
last sort of course adjustment such a critical thing, isn't it?
Yeah, because if they stuff that up because of something they didn't anticipate, like the shape of this rock, that's 10 years work and millions, if not billions of dollars, pounds, just gone.
Well, this is one of the things about the cost of going into space. It's not as expensive as a war.
No.
And so people say, we're suffering from recessions and financial loss and famines and food shortages, and yet we've still got plenty of money to send a probe to Mars. It's like, well, yeah, but sending a probe to Mars is $5 billion. $5 billion wouldn't be enough to launch a jet fighter. So
yeah. How long does it take to spend $5 billion on a ground war?
Yeah, as opposed to firing things up into space.
Plus the fact with this one, the European one, it's not just a single country like NASA is. This is funded by the UK. It's by the whole of the EU, basically, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you look at the individual cost per country, and it's probably relatively cheap.
And you say about if they mess this up and slam the probe into the comet and it's 10 years worth of nothing, it's not. I'm sure they've learned a heck of a lot already before
any science happens.
Before any science that happens, and they know next time that perhaps we need to get a better idea of the shape of these things before we start to approach them. They've learned stuff already before the science starts.
I naively drank the poison. I believed the lies. I was left broken-hearted. I became paralyzed. I could talk about all the sad things. I could sit around and feel real sorry for myself. I choose not to be a victim. Instead, consider me a survivor. This could be my finest hour. Somebody once told me coming out of the dark's a bright experience. Before you know it, you're laughing more and life makes sense. Somebody once told me if you can ride out the storm, the sun will come again. I've been holding my breath, sitting on the edge of my seat, waiting on this welcome to awakening. I've been afraid to feel, it's easier to be numb. God knows I've been trying to heal, 'cause I believe in freedom. I've been embracing revival, 'cause I'm too young to feel this tired. I've been trying to reckon with my clay hands and feet. I recognize my deep need. Somebody once told me coming out of the dark's a bright experience. Before you know it, you're laughing more and life makes sense. Somebody once told me if you can ride out the storm, the sun will come again. I've been holding my breath, sitting on the edge of my seat, waiting on this welcome to awakening. Maybe God's more concerned with growing us up than the pains of cutting teeth and the struggles of crawling. Somebody once told me coming out of the dark's a bright experience. Before you know it, you're laughing more and life makes sense. Somebody once told me if you can ride out the storm, the sun will come again. I've been holding my breath, sitting on the edge of my seat, waiting on this welcome to awakening.
And that was Ann Davis with the song Awakening. Now, recently, I say recently, how long have you had that watch now?
Oh, me?
Your
sorry.
EOS.
About 2 months.
So, and yours is a Sony.
Yeah, Sony Smartwatch 2.
Smartwatch 2. So it's the second generation of the smartwatch.
Yes.
And it works with Android. Do you know if it works with iPhone as well?
I believe not.
So it works with Android, but the phone itself isn't Android, is it?
Yes.
No.
What?
Sorry, not the phone. The watch. I mean, the watch isn't Android.
No.
The watch is proprietary,
yes.
but it does notifications and watch faces and apps
yes.
that are all
Android
linked to Android.
Yeah, you download. Excuse me. You download an extent. There's the Sony Smartwatch app on your phone, and you download extensions to that, which then talk to the watch.
So where do you download those extensions from? Do you download those from the Android Play Store?
Yeah, or from direct within the app itself.
Right. Okay, that's interesting. I didn't realise that. But Google have now released the Android Wear operating system, which is a very cut down version of Android, and currently runs on 3 devices, 2 of which are actually available, and 1 which is still making people drool but not available yet. The round, it's strange that we're all drooling over the idea of a round watch. Is the one that's going to be available later in the year.
Yeah.
Now, because for the last 7 years, I've been able to grab a phone from out of my pocket and see what the time is, or look up. Well, before that, I've been able to look at the computer screen generally and see what the time is. I stopped wearing a watch full time a long time ago.
Yeah, me too.
I'd possibly wear them for going out, or for something
as an accessory when you're dressing up or something. Yeah.
But the idea of wearing a watch full time is long since forgotten.
Yeah.
So last year, I believe it was around April, May, I saw a Kickstarter thing for an idea of a new watch, which is going to tie into your phone, and it allows you to make and receive calls through the watch. It's using a low power display. It's not a full color display. It's a low power display. So the watch battery lasts a lot longer than it would if it was a full on color display. And for, I think it was just a little over £80.
Oh, right.
They were providing this watch, and the delivery date was supposed to be November last year.
And I've met you a few times since November, and I've not seen you wearing it.
No, because I haven't got it. Come November last year, they said, well, due to problems with the manufacturing, it's unfortunately going to be delayed until April. Got to April, and it's due to problems with they get their stuff all made out in China somewhere, and
as does everybody else.
Yep, and due to problems with adverse weather conditions which leveled the factory, they're pretty much having to start again. So they're recovering what they've got. However, this has put in a delay, and it will be available towards the end of June, July-ish. Get towards the end of June, July-ish, and then we're told, well, they're all here, and they're showing us pictures of these watches in these boxes and saying, look, we got them all here, and we've sent them, so you will be getting them within the next couple of weeks. And then 3 weeks later, we get a message saying, well, what's actually happened is it's now stuck in a container ship just outside of a port in America where there's some sort of an industrial dispute over. And I think this is one of the problems with these whole Kickstarter things, is that it seems, and I may well be wrong with this, it seems that people who start off these Kickstarter things don't have the experience of producing or mass producing these things.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine a vast percentage of Kickstarters are a couple of guys in a garage building something. Wow, this is cool. Let's get funding to go into mass production, having never done mass production before.
And they get these ideas of, well, let's just put our finger in the air and say that they'll be ready by the end of the year. I mean, the end of the year is a long way away. And then things all go slower and slower and slower. But I shall name these people because at the moment they're not getting a lot of good press, and quite rightly so. But should it all turn around, hopefully, then later on in when I do eventually get the watch, then I can give them a glowing report. But the watch is called a Krios watch, and the design of the watch now is very dated, because the version 1 of the Sony watch, which you've got, was a testing the water to see whether people wanted it. It was a fair bit thicker than you've got. It wasn't particularly reliable, and the battery life was appalling.
Can I just say that mine, while it isn't very thick, the battery life is pretty good. I get 4 to 5 days out of it.
Yep.
But it is equally unreliable.
Really? It's still unreliable?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It works on a Bluetooth connection to your phone. And now I know Bluetooth doesn't have a particularly long range. It's only about 10 meters or so, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, when the phone is sitting in my pocket and my watch is on my wrist, leaning on my leg,
arms aren't that long. No.
I'm a fairly short guy and I don't have a 10-meter reach, and it regularly drops connection. Regularly, as in it will go through a connection drop, a connection drop, connection drop 4 or 5 times in a minute.
See, I'm never sure, because obviously the Bluetooth connection relies on both ends being good, and I'm never sure whether the phones have got it right yet.
Well, this is where, because I mean, as you know the phone, because it used to be your phone.
Yeah.
It's quite an old phone. I don't know whether the phone is up to the task.
Yeah. There's a lot of I don't knows here, but the versions of Bluetooth have changed, and while they purport to be backwards compatible, part of what they improve with the versions is the reliability. But you can't always improve the reliability when talking to an older standard.
So something else I also get is multiple notifications. I'll get the same tweet. You get on my watch face. You get a little icon that shows you how many unread notifications you've got, and you swipe down on the bit like Android. You swipe down to get your notification bar, and it will show you a list of all of your notifications. And I'll quite regularly see the same tweet 4 times in the list, one after another. The same email, the same Facebook.
Part of the problem here, and as much as I hate to say it, part of the strength of Apple, when Apple finally release their smartwatch, then it will be an Apple created watch that works with an Apple created phone, both of which running Apple based operating systems, running an Apple app. So, it's all, whereas you've got a Facebook app running on Android that's talking to a Sony watch running a Sony proprietary operating system.
Yeah.
Which of those is going wrong?
Yeah.
It's impossible to know which is going wrong.
I'd rule out the apps themselves, because it's happening with everything.
Right.
But then again, is it the central app, the Sony smartwatch app, talking to the watch that isn't? Or is it, I mean, it could be many things. Is it the fact that it drops a connection, re-picks up the connection, forgets it's had those notifications and sends them all again?
Starts again. Well, the strange connection with all the Android stuff. I think you remember when we went to walking last, I tried to take one of those panoramic pictures.
Yes.
And as soon as I turned on the camera and said panoramic, it said, okay, lined it up, and the whole thing froze, locked up, and the phone stopped. Now, I've tried reinstalling the phone app. I tried the typical technical support, turning the phone off and turning it back on again, all this sort of thing. And it didn't work. It's only when I went to a forum and started sort of comparing with other people what as other people tried that we realized it was a torch app. You can get an app which turns the little flashlight on your phone on as a torch.
Yes.
But the flashlight is part of the phone of the camera mechanism. So your torch program is messing with the camera application. The camera application doesn't like it
and crashes.
The two crash. So I uninstalled the flash torch, and so far I've now been able to take the panoramic pictures without any problem. And something like that, you're not gonna narrow down without sort of one by one going through your apps and backing them all out. Well, it might be that you've got another application somewhere that's causing the double posting, even though it doesn't seem to be anything to do with either of the apps.
It could be the fact that I've got individual apps for each of those services. Yeah. So I have got a Facebook app, I have got the Twitter app, I have got my email app. Are all of those affecting the Sony smart application?
Does the smart app itself log into Facebook?
I had to give it login information. Yeah.
Right. So is that producing the notifications, and then it's also relaying the notifications that you get from
the other one,
your Facebook app? This, one of our regular listeners, used to be known as Ken from Derby, commented when I posted up on Facebook about my problems. Perhaps you should read the manual. The interesting thing is, they don't do manuals anymore.
No.
Even by the time they've produced a PDF to give you the instructions, they've generally changed something, and they just don't keep up with the documentation. So this whole idea of forums and speaking to other people who have got the same issue is generally the only way you get around problems.
That more or less becomes the manual, doesn't it?
Pretty much, because once an update comes out, then that same fix might not apply anymore, and that same information doesn't necessarily apply anymore. But have you joined any Sony smartwatch Facebook groups or Google Plus groups?
Not as yet, no. Maybe I ought to.
Asking that sort of question on a Google Plus group, you may well get the answer you need.
You're listening to Dumbed Down Life.
Well, that's it for another show. There's definitely not going to be one next week because I shall be with child.
Oh, I knew you looked fat, but that...
Yeah, I've got my daughter for the entire week, and knowing what time she goes to bed and doesn't give me any time to myself, there's no chance of us getting together. So we've just come back, we've done 2 shows, and now we're going to have a 2-week break. So until then, ta-ra.
Ta-ra.
You can call the Dumbed Down Life crew on 07092 274 759.
You can follow us on Twitter. Our account name is Dumbed Down Life.
The email address is ddl.podshow@gmail.com. The website address is www.dumbeddownlife.com.